There is a question that the physician and trauma expert Gabor Maté spent decades asking inside hospital rooms, addiction clinics, and therapy circles. And the answer he found was so devastating in its simplicity that most people, when they hear it, go completely silent. He asked, why do people keep hurting themselves? Why do brilliant, loving, capable human beings keep choosing relationships that diminish them? Keep staying in jobs that hollow them out? Keep saying yes when everything inside them is screaming no? Keep numbing themselves with substances or screens or busyness or approval seeking, even when they know consciously that none of it is working. And what Gabor Maté discovered through his work with terminal cancer patients, through his years sitting with heroin addicts in Vancouver's downtown east side, through his own long and painful reckoning with himself, was this: the problem is never the behavior. The behavior is always the solution. It is always the answer to a much older, much deeper, much more unbearable question. And that question was asked in childhood. And the answer was written into the nervous system before the child had any way to refuse it. Stay with me for the next 20 minutes. Because what I'm about to walk you through is not a motivational framework. It is not a productivity system. It is the daily practice built directly on the foundations that Gabor Maté has spent a lifetime constructing. The understanding that beneath every destructive pattern, beneath every decision you regret, beneath every moment you betray yourself to keep someone else comfortable, there is an unconscious architecture, a hidden operating system. And until you begin, consciously and deliberately, to examine that system every single day, it will run your life. And you will call it fate. You will call it bad luck. You will call it just who I am. But it is not who you are. It is who you became. And those are two entirely different things. Gabor Maté teaches that at the very core of human suffering is a conflict so universal, so primal, that no one escapes it. He calls it the conflict between authenticity and attachment. Every child is born with two needs that are equally urgent and equally non-negotiable. The first is the need for attachment, the need to be close to the caregiver, to belong, to be loved, to not be abandoned. The second is the need for authenticity, the need to feel what is real, to express what is true, to exist as a genuine self rather than a performed one. And in a healthy environment, these two needs would never conflict. The child would be attached and authentic simultaneously. But most environments are not healthy enough for that. Most caregivers, through no fault of their own, because they too were wounded, they too were shaped by childhoods that demanded performance over truth. Most caregivers send a signal, subtle or devastating, that the authentic child is too much, too angry, too sad, too needy, too loud, too sensitive. And so the child makes the only rational decision available. The child suppresses the authenticity to protect the attachment. The child buries their real self to preserve the relationship. And the unconscious, that vast, intelligent, underestimated realm of the human psyche that holds everything we could not afford to feel, the unconscious takes all of that suppressed reality and it stores it perfectly, indefinitely, at a cost that does not declare itself until decades later. That cost is what you are paying right now. Every time you make a decision that you know is wrong, but cannot seem to stop making. Every time you feel the gap between who you are presenting to the world and who you know yourself to actually be. Every time you betray yourself in a moment where the stakes felt too high to be honest, that is the cost. And it is compounding daily. Now, before I give you the specific daily practices that begin to reverse this, practices drawn directly from Gabor Maté's framework, from his methods, from the revolutionary understanding of the body-mind connection that he has spent his life articulating, I want to pause here and speak to you directly. I want you to stop for a moment and go to the comments section of this video. And I want you to be honest with me in a way you may not have been honest with yourself yet. Tell me what your actual daily life looks like right now. not the version you're working toward, the version you're currently living. What time do you wake up? And what is the feeling that greets you before you even open your eyes? Is it possibility or is it weight? What decisions did you make in the last 7 days that you already feel quietly ashamed of? What conversation are you postponing? What relationship are you tolerating that is costing you your self respect? What is the need inside you that you're constantly masking with movement, with noise, with doing? Write it. Whatever it is, write it below. Because this channel is not a monologue, it is a mirror. And the comments section is where the most important part of this work happens. People just like you, carrying wounds just like yours, naming them out loud for the first time and discovering that they are not alone. Tell me what you are struggling with. Ask me about today's topic. Ask me what Gabor Mate's work says about your specific situation. I read every single one, and your question could become the foundation of the next video on this channel. Now, let us go deeper. The first practice, and the one that Gabor Maté consistently returns to as the most foundational of all, is the practice of checking in with your body before you make any decision of significance. Not your mind, your body. Because the mind, as Gabor Maté explains with extraordinary precision in his work, the mind will lie to you. The mind has been trained to rationalize, to justify, to construct elaborate logical frameworks for decisions that are actually being made by old fear. But the body cannot lie. The body keeps the score. And if you learn to read it, it will tell you exactly whether you're about to act from wholeness or from a wound. Before you send that message, before you agree to that meeting, before you stay silent when you need to speak, place your hand on your chest and ask, what does my body feel right now? Is there constriction? Is there the hollow, frantic quality of someone who's about to do something to manage anxiety rather than express truth? Or is there a settled, open quality, the feeling of a decision being made from the deepest, most grounded part of you? This practice sounds simple. It is not. Because most people with deep unconscious wounds have been disconnected from their bodies for so long that the body feels like foreign territory. The first time you try this, you may feel nothing. That numbness itself is information. That numbness is the unconscious speaking. It is saying, I have been protecting you from feeling this for a very long time, and we are going to have to go slowly. The second practice is what I want to call the honest morning question, drawn directly from Gabor Mate's understanding of how the unconscious operates at its most powerful in the spaces between sleep and full wakefulness. Before you reach for your phone, and this is non-negotiable, the phone must wait. Before you speak a single word, you're going to sit with your eyes closed and ask yourself one question. Not what do I have to do today, but this, what am I most afraid of feeling today? And whatever the answer is, whatever word or face or memory surfaces in the quiet of that question, that is the location of the wound that is running your day before it has even begun. That is the place from which your decisions will be made invisibly and powerfully unless you name it first. Naming it does not fix it, but naming it gives you a fraction of space between the wound and the response. And in that fraction of space, the possibility of genuine choice begins. The third practice is rooted in one of the most profound and underutilized of Gabor Mate's teachings, the understanding of what he calls compassionate inquiry. And in this daily practice, you're going to apply that same compassionate inquiry to yourself. Once each day, it can be in the evening, it can be during a walk, it can be in the 10 minutes before you fall asleep. You're going to revisit one moment from that day where you felt triggered, where you felt that disproportionate emotional reaction that left you confused or ashamed or defensive afterward. And instead of judging that reaction, you're going to follow it backwards like a thread. You're going to ask, what was I feeling in that moment underneath the anger or the withdrawal or the over-explanation? And what does that feeling remind me of? How old does this feeling feel? Because Gabor Maté is very clear about this. The trigger is never actually about the present moment. The intensity of the trigger is always borrowed from the past, from the moment in childhood when that same feeling of not being seen, of being abandoned, of being shamed, of not being enough was first installed. And when you can trace the trigger back to its origin, something remarkable begins to happen. The present person in front of you stops being your parent. The present situation stops being your childhood. And for the first time, you begin to respond to what is actually happening rather than to what once happened. The fourth practice addresses the most self destructive pattern that Gabor Maté identifies in the lives of the people he has worked with, the pattern of abandoning your own needs to manage someone else's emotional state. He calls this the loss of self in the service of attachment. And it shows up everywhere. It shows up in the person who cannot say no without a paragraph of explanation. It shows up in the person who monitors everyone else's mood in the room and adjusts themselves accordingly, like a human weather vane. It shows up in the person who is exhausted not because life is hard, but because they have been holding everyone else's weight while quietly putting down their own. The daily practice here is to identify once each day one moment where you chose someone else's comfort over your own truth. One moment where you said yes when you meant no, where you stayed silent when you needed to speak, where you smiled when you wanted to cry. Just one. Write it down. Do not judge it. Gabor Maté teaches that these choices were not weakness. They were survival strategies formed in an environment where expressing the truth felt genuinely dangerous. But they are not needed anymore. And the only way to begin releasing them is to first see them clearly, named and specific, in the light of your own awareness. The fifth and final daily practice is the one that integrates everything, and it is the one that most directly reflects what Gabor Maté means when he speaks about the possibility of healing. It is the practice of offering yourself the thing you're waiting for someone else to give you. The validation you're waiting for your partner to offer, give it to yourself tonight. The permission you're waiting for your employer to grant it to yourself. The forgiveness you're extending endlessly to other people, while withholding it from the person most in need of it, extend it to yourself. 5 minutes, eyes closed, hand on heart, saying to the self that is still waiting, still hoping, still performing to earn what should have been given freely. I see you. You are enough. You do not have to earn your place here. You belong. This is not affirmation. This is not positive thinking. This is what Gabor Maté calls reparenting, the deliberate daily act of providing to yourself the emotional nourishment that your environment could not reliably offer, so that you stop making decisions from the hunger of that deprivation and begin making decisions from the fullness of a self that finally, fully belongs to itself. I want to speak now to those who are listening to this and feeling something heavy moving beneath the surface, something they cannot quite name. If that is you, if there's a grief or a recognition or a tiredness in you right now that feels bigger than this video should have produced, I want you to know that is not weakness. That is your unconscious recognizing something it has been waiting a very long time to hear. That is the part of you that chose, somewhere along the way, to suppress its authenticity, to protect an attachment, and has been waiting patiently, exhaustingly, for someone to say, you can stop now. You can stop performing. You can stop managing. You can come home to yourself. Gabor Maté's entire life's work is a monument to one simple, devastating, luminous truth. That healing is not the removal of pain. Healing is the return to self, the slow, courageous, daily reclamation of the authentic person that was there before the world told you who you needed to be instead. And that is why I want to close this video with the words that Gabor Maté himself has returned to again and again as the truest summary of what the whole journey is for. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not the person your wound constructed, not the person your fear approved, not the edited, managed, performance optimized version of yourself that you have been presenting to the world in the hope that it would finally, this time, be enough. Who you truly are, in your fullness, in your contradiction, in your shadow and your light, your need and your strength, your wound and your wisdom, reunited at last into something that deserves the only name that was ever yours, yourself. Begin today with 5 minutes of stillness, with one honest question, with one small act of choosing your truth over your fear. Begin imperfectly, begin afraid, begin anyway. And if this video reached something real in you, leave it in the comments. Tell me where you are. Tell me what you are carrying. Tell me what you want to understand better about Gabor Maté's work and how it applies to your specific life, your specific wounds, your specific daily patterns. This channel exists for that conversation, and I will be here for every word of it.